lot of games involve death in one way or another, but not often in a detailed and beautiful way. In The Sims, you drown Sims in pools and set their houses on fire. In Fortnite, you kill others to take the win, but in Spiritfarer, you take care of spirits during their final days and help them come to terms with death, taking them through the everdoor, a passage to the afterlife. In Spiritfarer, you play as Stella, a Spiritfarer, and help spirits found throughout the game with completing their final goals before releasing them into the afterlife. As you play the game, you learn more and more about the Stella and the characters you take on board, every single one of them having detailed background stories about their life and also their death. You quickly find out that the spirits you meet are not just random strangers who have passed, but they are all important people from Stella's life. First, let's quickly introduce our main character, Stella. Stella is a young woman with a large star-shaped hat. She traveled a lot and spent her adulthood as a palliative care nurse in charge of helping increase the quality of life of her patients. This is also where she met a lot of the spirits that you encounter in the game. I'll be going over the characters in order that you'll encounter them, trying to avoid spoilers of the later game. That way you can look through the chapters of the video, and then if you haven't finished the game yet, you can come back later and watch those parts. The game starts with Stella and Daffodil, her cat, together on a small boat, meeting the current Spiritfarer, Sharon. He explains to Stella that she'll be taking over his job from now on. He explains that it will be your responsibility to help fulfill the spirit's last requests before returning them to the everdoor, a large round bridge on red water. He is the first character you say goodbye to, disappearing in a bright light after rowing his boat through the everdoor. This is definitely the least painful goodbye of the game, so be prepared. It will not stay this easy to be at the everdoor, and this place will become your least favorite part of the map, even though it might be visually beautiful. The first spirit of the game you meet is Gwen. She takes form of a tall deer with 3 pairs of ears and powerful antlers, even though she is a woman, representing how successful she got in a very male-dominated field. Gwen's parents were friends with Stella's family, causing Gwen to become an important part of Stella's life. She's a few years older than Stella and kinda takes on a big sister role. Gwen did not get along very well with her father, who would parade her and her intelligence in front of others for his own personal gain. As a way of rebelling, Gwen started smoking at a young age, and her character also often smokes in the game. Unfortunately, the long-term smoking causes her to develop lung cancer. In the late stages of her disease, she travels back to her parents' house and considers committing suicide. But Stella reaches out and successfully helps Gwen accept her fate instead of taking her own life. In the end, lung cancer kills Gwen while she's in her 40s. Every spirit has some form of minigame or event, and her minigame is a swarm of jellyfish you have to catch. The sky gets dark during the event, and the stages of the swarm represent the 4 stages of Gwen's cancer. An association made because Gwen got stung by a jellyfish on the first day of her diagnosis. Her spirit flower, which gets left behind after she dies, is an asphodel. Gwen is the first character to leave the boat, and being the first character on the boat, she is the first character you really get to know. Therefore, she has a really special place in my heart and that of many other players, as it's very hard to say goodbye to her. After you bring Gwen to the everdoor, you meet Hades, a large owl made of mist. He appears multiple times throughout the game and shows Stella her memories with some of the other spirits. Hades represents death. Mist always does in this game. The appearance of mist shows how close and inevitable death is, and it appears in many places of this game, during multiple of the mini-games, the edges of the map, and the islands. Atul is a large blue frog who is very cheerful and always hungry. He is Stella's uncle, and it's clear that they have a lot of happy memories together. But Atul's ending is one of the worst to many players, because you never get to say goodbye. While Stella goes to Europe in her early 20s, her uncle suddenly disappears, and she never finds out what happened to him. This experience is also passed on to the players, because you never take Atul to the everdoor. While the other spirits get a goodbye you can somewhat prepare yourself for, Atul leaves the boat after completing his last quest, a family dinner for you and the other spirits on board. When you return to the boat after the quest is over, he is not on the boat with everyone else, leaving only his spirit flower, a white lily, in his house. A lot of players wonder if it's a bug when he is just gone, no explanation, but you slowly realize that it's what the game intended. You cannot always get closure before people die. I think Atul's death also hurts a lot because he is like the second character that gets onto your boat, but a lot of other spirits leave before he does, meaning that he's there for quite a while and you kind of get used to him being around, and then suddenly he is just gone. Summer is a snake in a green cloak. She worked as an ergonomic engineer, where she used heavy chemicals, which caused her to develop breast cancer. Because of her sickness, she leaves the town she grew up in and meets Rose, her wife, and also Stella's aunt. During recovery, Summer takes up farming and starts getting interested in spirituality. She builds a garden with her wife, where they live together until Rose passes away. Summer does not take Rose passing well, and she struggles to take care of herself. Her cancer also ends up returning. After meeting Summer, you start encountering dragons in the water. The dragons appear angry and in pain, covered in oars that you have to remove. There are 2 dragons when she is on your boat, representing how she got cancer twice. Eventually, the cancer takes her life, and only after you say goodbye, you meet the 3rd and final dragon. This version of the dragon is incurable. Stella was with Summer during the final stages of her life, and this experience with Summer is also what inspires Stella to become a nurse when she gets older. Alice was probably the spirit who I personally thought the most about after I finished all of the stories. She's a little hedgehog, a stay-at-home mom who spent her time taking care of her family. She loved fashion, traveling, and romance novels, but as she gets older, she starts showing signs of dementia. As you go through her quests, she slowly forgets who you are and where she is. She struggles to walk and becomes easily frustrated. I felt like Alice was getting worse right in front of me, and nothing I could do was making it better. At one point, you have to dress up as Alice's daughter Annie because she does not remember who you are, and it hurts to watch as you go along with her reality to make her feel safer. As you drop Alice off at the everdoor, she realizes you aren't Annie, and that hurts. As a player, you try so hard to give everyone a good experience on the boat and make them leave happy, and you just cannot do that. Alice was the first patient who died in Stella's care as a nurse, and that was an experience that reaffirmed her will to work in end-of-life care. Alice's event are pill bugs that you have to catch, representing her memories as a child of catching bugs in the rain. Alice leaves behind a peace lily, representing how she was content with only very little. Astrid is a large lynx. She comes off as a little selfish, but she devoted her life to others. During World War II, she had Jewish children in the basement of her mother's restaurant. After meeting Astrid, you encountered 3 large turtles in the water that represent Astrid's closest friends. They gossip with Astrid when you go to see them, but you can also grow trees and ores on them that you need for other quests in the game, showing how generous they were. Eventually, she met and married Giovanni, another spirit you meet later on, who is represented by a lion. He fought in the war and the resistance, finding a normal, peaceful life after the war ended. He cheated on Astrid regularly, and she found it hard to separate herself from him. The couple took a sort of grandparents' role for Stella after she met them when she was a teenager living in France. Eventually, Astrid left Giovanni for good when he betrayed her one last time. Giovanni worked hard to charm everyone, even Stella, and he understood that he hurt Astrid, but never truly felt sorry about it. He ended up dying from a heart attack, and even though Astrid had moved on, she was still by his side as he died. Giovanni's events are bright, colorful comet showers, the sounds representing his experience in the war. The loud explosions put him on edge, no matter how beautiful it is. Giovanni leaves behind a borage flower, which represents the courage he showed during the war. Astrid eventually passed away from old age, with Stella by her side. Her flower is a mallow flower, synonymous with how much she was consumed by love. I loved Astrid and the gossip she would tell, and watching Giovanni constantly make her upset made me feel so angry for her. There were multiple times where I wished I could kick him off my boat and leave him behind on an island somewhere, but unfortunately that is not how the game worked. By the end of the story though, I do still think I could appreciate Giovanni as a character, even though I might not have liked him as a person. Gustav is an owl, representing a German art curator that Stella met while she traveled through Japan. Gustav curated art for many museums and galleries all over the world. He eventually developed multiple sclerosis, a condition that paralyzed him but left him with a clear mind. It slowly killed him and left him upset and frustrated as he could no longer do the job he loved so much, leaving him in a chair. Gustav's event is a swarm of fireflies, a metaphor for the buzzing he describes to Stella. It's the overwhelming feeling he had in his body as his MS took over. Gustav leaves behind a red poppy, a symbol of pleasure, sacrifice, and remembrance. Stanley is an 8-year-old boy, represented by a mushroom you fish out of the water and grow in the garden. Stanley is the only one not represented by an animal, which shows off how different he is from everyone else, being so incredibly young. He loves experimenting and loves playing with Stella, and he also gives Stella little drawings of the boat and the spirits who come onto the ship. For Stella, Stanley was a difficult patient. She found it difficult to grasp that such a lovely young soul ended up in her care. When I played Spiritfarer, I think Stanley's everdoor scene made me cry the most because of the things that he tells Stella, like how scared he was and how hard he tried to win, because he could see that his parents were hurting. His final quest also leaves him upset after he puts on a play for the other spirits, and they make fun of him for it. I felt so bad that he didn't get to have a happy ending, but it was never what the game was about. There is no way to save the spirits. It's not clear which illness killed Stanley, but from the conversations you can tell that he was likely in a coma for a while before he passed. For Stanley's game, you catch little dust shades, bright, funny-looking creatures that represent the strong imagination of children. When Stella's out with Jacob, Stanley's magical pet beetle, she can see the ghosts that Stanley sees and catch them to try and stop them from spreading sadness to the ship. Buck is another strange character, being the only mythical creature on board. Somehow, Buck is already dead when Stella finds him, meaning that Bug never leaves once he gets on the boat and never gets an everdoor scene. He is also the only spirit that's already in his final form when you find him, instead of revealing himself once he gets on the boat. In Stella's life, Buck was her sister Lily's friend, who died as a teenager, and Stella only knows of him through stories from after he passed. Buck played RPG games to escape from reality, which then made Stella fall in love with those games too. His minigames include large cardboard versions of orcs to take down. His Spiritfarer rue flowers represent sorrow and regret, showing he never got to fully live his life. After the passing of every spirit, their constellation gets shown in the sky, but Buck's constellation is visible since the very start of the game, so even before you even meet him. Bruce and Mickey are a weird pairing, a large bull carried around by a very, very tiny hummingbird. Stella met them after Mickey ends up in a coma after a gunshot wound from during a car chase. His brother Bruce never left his side during any of their illegal or dangerous activities. Bruce always talks on behalf of Mickey in denial that he is not there anymore, even though he is technically alive, but not savable anymore. It is suggested that Bruce commits suicide once he admits to himself that Mickey is gone, saying, "If he goes, I go," before going through the everdoor. Their event includes pulsar rays, bright shooting stars of light in chaotic patterns. It represents the excitement, adrenaline, and fear that they felt during gunfights. Bruce makes angry comments and big requests the whole time they're on the boat, and I did not like having them for this reason. They gave me so much work, and every single time I finished anything, they would just tell me how it still was not good enough. But I can appreciate their story now. Mickey leaves behind a fennel flower, representing forgotten strength, and Bruce leaves behind a heliotrope, a symbol of never-ending devotion. Elena is one of Stella's last patients. She's represented by a dog. While she is on the boat, she is very serious, stubborn, and seems to lack empathy. She refuses hugs and seems very cold. She was a teacher who demanded perfection of her students, showing that through her quests, where she makes you do challenges you must complete. She doesn't praise you if you complete them, and she criticizes you if you fail. None of her students ever impressed her. One day she screamed at a student, and that was the first time that her distracted and talkative class actually listened to her. She didn't like watching her students struggle, but she knew that they had to learn, and this was the best way to teach them to survive and become leaders. Elena is faced with a short-term fatal diagnosis, and somehow accepts her diagnosis quickly, accepting death as a simple moment. She helps Stella come to terms with the fact that life comes with loss and you need to let go and move on. Her everdoor scene is the only time where you get to hug her, which made the scene special for me, because I knew that this was a selfless moment for Elena. She did this for Stella and not for herself. I was never good at Elena's challenges and I failed them many times, which means she also told me a few times how disappointed she was. Her challenges were really difficult, but it did feel extra good completing them, so I guess Elena was right in her teaching methods. Her spirit flower she leaves behind represents how easily she dealt with death, and with the cypress flower, which is a symbol of death in many cultures. Beverly is a tiny owl. She is a blunt woman who comes off meaner than she actually is. She loved to gossip and knew everyone in her town growing up. She loses her husband at a young age, and after her kids grow up, she leaves and finds comfort in her neighbor Stella. Unfortunately, her Alzheimer's slowly takes over and she can tell her brain is tricking her. She wants to pass on her life story and wants to make sure nothing's forgotten about, and Stella helps document them for her. She repeats things to Stella multiple times, dealing with memory loss in a different way than Alice, and you can tell that she is frustrated about it. On her way to the Everdoor, she tries to talk to you about your relationship and memories together, but instead she doesn't really remember and spends most of the boat ride in silence. She leaves behind a red anemone, a powerful symbol of death and forsaken love. Jackie is a hyena, representing a nurse Stella worked for during an internship where she worked at a remote, severely understaffed hospital. Stella connects with Jackie, watching how he connects with patients and the unconventional methods he used to take care of them. Jackie constantly pages you back to the hospital to help him out with stuff, which for me seemed to happen every single time that I had just left the area that the hospital was in. As Stella spends more time working with Jackie, she starts to notice that there were parts of the job he would skip. At first, she would pick up the slack for him, but one day, Jackie and Daria, one of his most difficult patients, get in an incident that leaves Jackie seriously hurt. Jackie gets found out to be neglectful at work and gets fired. Stella then takes him in, letting him sleep on her couch for a while. She notices how neglectful and self-loathing he really was. Jackie dies soon after in a traffic accident. His flower is a red dahlia, a symbol of power and inner strength, but also dishonesty and betrayal. Daria was a young patient under Jackie and Stella's care. She's a purple bat in the game. Daria has chromesthesia, or sound-to-color synesthesia, which causes her to have very complicated relationships with everyone around her, because no one can experience the world quite like she does. For Daria's quests, you take a look into her world, with a colorful, complicated minigame. Stella became her primary caregiver after Jackie left, and she got close to her. Daria was hard to get to know, as she hardly spoke about her past. She was a gifted musician and painter. Stella smuggled in art supplies for Daria, which wasn't allowed, but helped Daria a lot, and allowed her to go into a more adapted care facility. Stella visited her often, and she eventually died from many health issues with Stella by her side. By this point, Stella was an experienced nurse. Daria is the only spirit who does not get a house on the boat. She's only there to be taken to the Everdoor and spends the rest of her time at the hospital, where you find her. Daria's flower is a saffron crocus, associated with creativity, love, and death. Lily isn't really a spirit. She's a manifestation of Stella's younger sister. She is different from everyone else since she isn't dying. Lily is a swarm of butterflies, coming together only at night. Through Lily, you slowly go over all of Stella's memories, which finally puts together the last pieces of the story. She reads out letters from Stella's trips and tells the player about how their dad got sick, but they kept it from Stella so that she wouldn't cancel her plans to travel through Japan and return home instead. Stella did not find out that her dad was sick until she got home way later. Lily and Stella's dad passed away after Stella returned, which cemented Stella's choices to go into end-of-life care, but traumatized Lily. She then starts avoiding death at all costs and turns to alcohol to numb her fears, not understanding how Stella is dealing with death so often. Lily showing up on the boat shows that she's facing her fears of watching a loved one die, because in the end, her love for Stella is bigger. Once Lily arrives, the boat can move during the night, implying that Stella is running out of time and can't stand still any longer. Hugging Lily turns her into a mist of butterflies, showing that Lily is impermanent. She isn't there the way the other spirits were. Finally, after all of Lily's quests, you make it to the final spirit, Stella. Unfortunately, this isn't just a story about saying goodbye to others. You also have to say goodbye to yourself. In this final quest, it is Stella's turn to go to the Everdoor. My time has come. I am no longer alone. Lily and Mom are with me, holding my hand somewhere out there. It seems the entire story of the game takes place in Stella's head while she's in a hospital, possibly in a coma. This final quest, she finally gives herself permission to let go, having gone over everything that happened to her and the people important in her life. On the way to the Everdoor for the final time, the spirits of everyone you've had on your boat show up in front of their houses. They're white and slightly transparent versions of themselves and can only be hugged, not spoken to. When Stella takes her final departure, Lily's butterflies follow her rowboat as she heads to the Everdoor. However, upon arrival at the bridge, the butterflies withdraw, hinting that though Stella has been a Spiritfarer to many others, and an end-of-life care nurse, in the end, everyone must face death alone. Stella does officially not have a spirit flower, but with her cat being named Daffodil, it can kind of be assumed that he is there to represent her flower. Daffodils represent rebirth and new beginnings, which I think fits the ending of the game very well. It might be over, but there is space for something new. A lot of people find the ending of the game to lack depth and detail, especially since you talk to the other spirits on their way out, and Stella's boat ride is completely silent. But I think it makes sense the way it is. There is no new Spiritfarer, because this was Stella's life, and these were her memories. All of the places you visited were places that she went during her life, and passing this on to someone else just would not make any sense. Also, it feels like the whole point of the game was that death isn't perfect, and expecting Stella to have a beautiful death that's planned out in nice details just isn't how life works. Death happens and leaves you uncomfortable, unsettled, and sad, and the ending leaves space for you to think and wonder what else could have been. And I think that's exactly what the game wanted from the players. I also think that the whole idea of, oh, it was all a dream, might be kind of off-putting to some players, but I think Spiritfarer deals with this in a way different from other games or films. While this might be something that is not complete reality, there's still stories that are true to Stella, and they're just represented in a different way. Another thing I thought was really beautiful is that a lot of the stories from the spirits in the game are based on people in the real life of the Thunderlotus staff who worked on the game, representing their own personal experiences with loss. When I saw the list of names at the end of the game, I was like sobbing. I thought that was a really beautiful thing to add, and it makes the game even more special for me as a player to know that these are representations of real people and real-life experiences. And with that, that concludes the story of all of the spirits in Spiritfarer. I hope that you enjoyed this video, even though I went over a lot of difficult topics. I'm gonna be honest, I cried while going through all of the game footage and going through the art book, which describes in more detail the stories behind the characters and the game events. This game means a lot to me, and I've been thinking about this video for months, so I'm really happy that I finally did it, and that I could share the love that I have with this game with you guys. And I would love to talk to you guys in the comments about your personal theories about the spirits or about the events that happen in the game. If you have not played Spiritfarer yet, I highly recommend it if it wasn't clear. I think while this video went over a lot of the stories, playing the game is a really different experience. And there's a lot of dialogue that I obviously didn't go over, so watching the stories unfold in front of you is really special. The game is also on sale very often, so keep checking on it. I would also love to go over the stories of other cozy games, so if there's any other games you'd like me to talk about, let me know in the comments, and I absolutely will. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye!